What we want to do here, as Alex talked about, we've been sort of, essentially creating surveys. Now, surveys are sort of, a sort of desperate trick of PR a lot of the time. This wasn't really why we started trying to do these surveys in the first place. We wanted to sort of interrogate journalists in order to better inform our own strategies and to better inform the strategies of our clients. We're going to go through some of that survey data, but we're going to begin with Philip Young here. Now, Philip Young's at the University of Sunderland. I first met Philip about 3 or 4 years ago now, where I was fortunate enough to share a stage with him. Philip lectures at the University of Sunderland. He teaches a course there on online communications, and he also blogs at Mediations. He's part of the Euroblog organisation. He's incredibly well informed. And what I was going to ask Philip to do, we're going to go through the data in great detail when we start reporting on this stuff. But what Philip's going to do today is we're actually going to look back very briefly as an introduction at the way we were in 2007 and the way that sort of communicators, PRs were thinking about social media back then. And the reason why we're doing this is that when we get into the surveys, you'll see we've got a few questions which look at how things changed in the past 3 years. So we want to see how those predictions compare with where we actually are now. I also want to talk about why we're doing this. What is the purpose? I'm sure I'm not going to be telling you anything you don't know that. I want to be talking about sort of changing newsrooms, changing journalism practices, and fundamentally the changing nature of news itself. And then we're really sort of going to get into the survey. Quick note about some of these surveys. I'm really going to focus on the most recent survey that we've done. Back in about sort of 8 months ago now, the US started this process out. They did a big sort of survey with a lot of journalists in America. And this was followed up earlier this year by Cision in Scandinavia, who talked to journalists as well as communicators in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland. Now, from the UK, we've just done a survey of the UK, France, and Germany. It's mainly that data that I'm going to look at, but we're going to be referring back to all these other countries as well. If you want to take a deeper dive into the Scandinavian stuff, that's available on all the Cision Scandinavia websites. Likewise, the American data is fully available on the American website right now. We're also going to try and reach some tentative conclusions, but I do warn you this is very, very new data. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to Philip, who's going to say a few words about the way we were.
Good morning, everybody. If I was to start this presentation by saying, put your hands up if you use social media. Are you on Facebook? Are you on Twitter? Do you blog? It's a bit of a waste of time because I'm pretty near certain that every single person in the room uses social media in some way. And quite a number of you will use it in fairly creative business ways. That's happened extremely quickly. As far as I'm aware, the first people who were involved in blogging, weblogging and PR, started to emerge in 2002, so about 8 years ago. I started my own mediations blog in 2004, and it's something like number 27 on the timeline of PR blogs. So again, not a long time ago. In 2004, a few people, mostly American, but inspired by an Australian, Trevor Cook, put together what they called a global PR blog week, which PR bloggers came together in a virtual environment and added content across a week. And there was some very interesting conversations started to develop. I think there was calling them conversations, and the driving force, I think, was then the Clue Train Manifesto. And 6 years ago, the key themes that appeared in global PR blog week were tactics. We know that we've got these things called blogs. We hadn't got Facebook, we hadn't got Twitter, we hadn't got YouTube, but we knew that people could start to create their own web presence easily and quickly. PR could use it, but the burning question was, hang on, who's allowed to use these things? And if you remember, there were endless debates in the early days of who should blog, who should be allowed to join these public conversations. And the instant response from boardrooms right down across organisations was, hang on, if everybody can talk, what's going to happen to our organisation? We called it transparency, but really it was terror. That the inner dealings of the organisation were going to emerge. And then there was a groundswell of radical evangelistic thinking that turned around and said, well, if everybody in an organisation can communicate, so they couldn't in the past, PR must be dead. And there was quite a lot of controversy, a lot of heat generated around the notion that PR was dead. In the context of global PR blogging, Steve Rubel, who runs Micro Persuasion blog, probably the most influential PR blog in the world. Steve now works for Edelman. Steve posted something that said, weblogs present the biggest opportunity for PR professionals. By launching blogs, marketers, that's an interesting word, isn't it, can join the community, share thoughts and ideas at eye level. It's an entirely new but different communication channel that PR people haven't fully explored. Well, in a way, you could probably, he said that 6 years ago, and to an extent, every single word of it still holds true today. Most of us have experimented, whether we really, I don't think anybody could say that we've fully explored it. This was the backdrop. By around the middle of 2005, some academic colleagues started to try to take a serious interest in how weblogs were impacting on PR practice. And through EUPRERA, the European Public Relations Education and Research Association, we launched a project we called Euroblog. And it started off as an attempt to benchmark what was happening. It was not a particularly scientifically robust survey, but we asked as many people as we could across Europe to tell us what they thought about weblogs. We hadn't got round to calling it social media at the moment. We got some interesting results. I won't spend hours talking through results, but here we asked in 2000, at the end of 2005, presented in Stuttgart in February 2006. As a PR professional, one of the questions was, as a PR professional, do you agree with the following statement? In a few years, weblogs and softwares will be widespread. And even back in 2000, the survey was the last 2 months of 2006, almost 90% of people knew that what was happening was going to have an impact on what they did. Weblogs and software are revolutionising the way we communicate. Again, this far back, people were realising that was true, 85%. But we still had a strong cohort who were either resistant or just plain dismissive. I can see some people, some possible uses for weblogs, but overall they will have limited impact. That was 37%. More than 1 in 3 people didn't think weblogs would have an impact on the way PR operated. And finally, we had weblogs and social software are overhyped and are not relevant to my daily business. So 1 in 5 PR professionals didn't think that the things that we're talking about within the umbrella of social media, the things that Brian Solis was talking about so enthusiastically yesterday, 1 in 5 professionals saying, what are they talking about? And then we also unearthed what is probably still my favourite finding in any survey I've done in a few years of academic study. We asked PR professionals what they thought was the biggest advantage that would come out of social media. Their answer was not quite unequivocal, because it was only 1 in 3 that said it. But I think 1 in 3 is quite a good response. So what is the biggest advantage of social media, we asked. And they said, the most important was, we can be seen to be adopting leading edge technology. They thought the exciting bit was to go into their clients and say, we can do social media for you. If the client had said why, they wouldn't have had a clue, but they had something shiny and new to take into the boardroom. The one thing that they hadn't spotted, hopefully I had a little bit of insight in this, it's not entirely me sniggering with hindsight, they thought the least important thing was receiving feedback from the audience. I suspect that there are audiences out there. I suspect that we all see those responses as somewhat antiquated and outdated. So Paul, show us what's happened 3 years on.